Hi, welcome to my channel. I'm excited to be here today on my first design team video for Technique Junkies. I have this awesome stamp set that's called To Ride a Horse. It's part of the March 2021 new release, and there are 5 stamps in this set. 2 horse images and 3 sentiments. Let's get started. I did speed this up greatly in the interest of time. I'm using pan pastels for my first card panel. The color that I'm putting right down is phthalo blue tint. Then I'm putting down violet tint, and then I'm putting permanent red tint. Pan pastels have the consistency of a very expensive eyeshadow, but there's no fall off. So it's very clean to work with, and you don't have a lot of extra fallout after you create with it. So I'm just arranging this galloping horse along with the sentiment, to ride a horse is to fly without wings. I have to tell you, when I saw this stamp set was available for March, I was super excited. Not only because it's my first time creating for Technique Junkies, which I'm super excited about, but also because of the horses, and it just took me back to a time when I was young and wanted a horse more than anything in the world. So my color scheme is very much from the 1980s. I'm a child of the 80s, and so I thought, what better way to not honor the memory of how much I loved the idea of having a horse than by using some colors from the 80s, pink and blue. I'm using the Cloud Edger stencil from A Colorful Life Designs, which is also available at Technique Junkies. And if you are interested in this stamp or any other of the stamps from the March 2021 new release, if you order before March 8th, you'll receive 15% off the new release stamp. It will be automatically taken off of your order if you order before March 8th. I also have a code below for my discount as a design team member that you can use at any time. And you can use the 15% off along with my 10% off. So the 15% off, though, is only good until March the 8th. The 10% off is good as long as you use my link below. I'm going to go ahead and use some VersaFine Clara Nocturne ink, and I'm going to stamp that beautiful image of the galloping horse. I'm going to stamp that twice, so it's going to look like there's 2 horses. And the sentiment that I'm going to use for this is, people come and go, but horses leave hoof prints on your heart. In case you were wondering, yes, that was a piece of acetate that I had down on the panel. I did that so that I would make sure that everything was aligned correctly. I want to make sure that my sentiment is straight and my horses are running in a straight line. So that's why I use the acetate. I really like the way the Cloud Edger stencil helped create this kind of dreamy background with clouds. And the colors that I used were permanent red tint, phthalo blue tint, and then I jumped in, I grabbed a little bit of magenta and a little bit of violet, just so that the bottom was a little bit darker than the top. Okay, and that's my second panel. For my third panel, I used the same colors as my first, but I just flipped it. So the pink is at the top and the purple's at the bottom. And this sentiment says, ride, to fly, to feel, to touch, to breathe, to laugh, to soar, to overcome, to relax, to prove them wrong, to belong, to feel strong, to heal, to love, and to love back, to communicate without words, ride, to live. And then I stamped a picture of the horse facing front, and it's got a bridle, and it's basically the top of the horse. So that's what I did for my third panel. Now let's work on our backgrounds. My first background, I'm using some Catherine Pooler ink. I've got Pucker Up and Cumberbund here, and I have a piece of Himilco semi-gloss paper and the Cloud Edger stencil again, and I'm just going and creating this real dramatic background. And I'm going to be using this with one of my card panels that I made earlier. I also grabbed some of the Drive-In Catherine Pooler ink, which is this purple. So the pink is Pucker Up, the blue is Cumberbund, and the purple is Drive-In. If you don't have this cloud edger stencil, I would definitely recommend getting one. I have lots of different cloud stencils, but this is my all-time favorite because it looks so realistic. The way the clouds are shaped and how you can get different sides. There's 4 different sides to this stencil. I like that I can tuck it up in underneath the row that I already created, and it just looks really natural. When you get to the bottom of your panel, you just have to flip it over and maybe just color it in. But in the end, this might even end up being trimmed, who knows, depending on what size I'm going to be using for my background. And I took a little bit of the purple ink and I blended over top of that just to combine those colors a little bit. I'm using a Colorful Life Designs Mosaic Love stencil, and I'm going to be ink blending directly onto my card base. So I'm blending Pucker Up ink directly onto the card base. This is an A2 top folding card base that is landscape orientation. And so I'm just blending it so that I have something in the background and it works out really nice. This panel that I stamped earlier and it's blended in the background with pan pastels, I'm going to trim it so that it is on top of the card base. It actually looks like I have a mat behind the panel, but it's actually the card base. I wanted to add some interest, so I took my corner chomper and I chomped all 4 corners of the panel. I'll just attach that to my card base with some double-sided tape runner. And then I had some hearts that were die cut from my stash, and I'm going to incorporate those under the front of this card. I thought it would look cute because the sentiment talks about people come and go, but horses put hoof prints on your heart. So I have these 3 hearts, 2 solid hearts, and then 1 that's hollow in the middle. What I'm doing is using just some pop dots that are real tiny on the back, and then I grabbed that ink blending brush. It had some of the Pucker Up ink left over on it, and what I did was, for my pop dots, I colored them pink. And you might be wondering why I did that. It's just that if a person looks at the card from the side, they can look under and see that the foam tape is there, but if it's pink, it just kind of disguises it a little bit. That's just a little trick I wanted to share with you, especially when you're dealing with those really small die cuts, and you can actually put a piece of foam behind them, but the piece of foam is almost as big as the die cut. Next, I have some 2-way glue. I'm going to put that on the back of this hollow heart, and then I'll put that down on my card, and this card is done. So we've got a background, we've got a main panel, and I think it turned out really nice. We're about halfway through the video. I just wanted to remind you to make sure you check out the description box below so that you can see links to the other design team members. I'm going to have links to their blogs and also information about ordering from Technique Junkies, including the 15% off sale that's good till March 8th on new release items, and my discount code, which is 10% off your entire order using my affiliate link. Now I have this sort of like a torn edge rectangle die. This is the first panel that I made, and I'm going to go ahead and die cut this, and I'm going to adhere it to the cloud edger, the one that I used the Catherine Polar inks to create. So I trimmed it down, and I'm going to apply it with double-sided tape to the black card base. This is a A2 card base, again top fold landscape. I'm going to use foam tape just to give this a little bit dimension, And I'm going to do the same trick that you saw me do before, where I use the pink from that blending brush. It's actually Pucker Up Ink by Catherine Puller. And I'm just going to ink the edges of my foam tape. And that card is done. Once I put the panel on, it's done. I think it turned out great. I really like this one. That background and that cloud edger stencil, it's very dramatic. Okay, that's card number 2. You see card number 1. Let's move on to number 3. I have a wonky stitched rectangle die that I'm going to use for my panel. I'm going to run that through my die cut machine, and this is what it looks like when it comes out. I have a piece of craft cardstock and a 3D embossing folder that looks like barn wood. I'm going to take my spray and mist a little bit of water on top. This helps to prevent the cardstock from ripping while it's in the embossing folder, because a 3D embossing folder is very deeply etched and it has a tendency to make the paper tear. So just spraying it with just a very light mist of water helps. I have a, you guessed it, A2 top folding landscape card base, which is my favorite, obviously. I've got my wood, which is really a piece of paper that looks like wood. I had just a piece hanging off there, so I'm just trimming that. I'm going to take my panel, I'm going to put foam tape on the back of it to give it a little bit of dimension. Once I pop it up, I will adhere it to the back, to the front of the card base that has that craft cardstock that I ran through the 3D embossing folder. And that is card number 3. And so here we have 3 cards using the same stamp set to ride a horse. Here are some still photos of the cards that I created. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. Please give me a thumbs up and leave a comment below and tell me which card is your favorite. I'd love to have you as a subscriber, and I hope to see you real soon with some more videos from Technique Junkies. Have a hopeful day. Bye-bye.